As you look across the numbers we got, I mean, we're not down significantly, but we are down. The numbers were great as expected. Were they great enough here?
I think you bring up such a great point, and great to be with you guys. I'm jealous of Jensen's leather closet because I can only imagine how great it is. But I think when you're Nvidia, good isn't always good enough. We've seen this movie before with the last 6, now 7 out of 9 quarters, the stock has slid. So what I'm interested in is less so the numbers and more what Jensen says. The guidance is something that I'm really looking for. The headlines might be Nvidia, did it beat, did it not? But I think the real story is the numbers and the guidance, because what they have to prove is the AI infrastructure growth cycle, does it have a lot more runway for them versus what Alex said in the last segment, opening up runway for competition? They have to show us that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Molly, if this is the Super Bowl of earnings, look, we've got the numbers. We're waiting for Jensen Huang to speak. Is this the halftime show? I don't know. It's a pretty good lineup, I would say. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us today. Yeah, you speak about that guidance. That's what kind of stood out to me when it came to the gross margins. I mean, whether the market is taking issue with the fact that they're guiding for, what was it, in the range of 73.5 to 74.5. I mean, that's not the 75% that they're currently reporting here. Have we reached peak margins, or has this got something to do with something else I noticed that the company announced as well, that they're partnering with suppliers to secure critical components? Now, that's really interesting because Jensen Huang has been a very good diplomat in all of that. I mean, we know he's got a very good relationship with TSMC and the folks over in Taiwan. I mean, he runs around South Korea eating Korean barbecue with the guys over there as well. I mean, what do you make of, gross margin guidance right now?
So I think it is. It's a weird, I don't know what the right word, dynamic, I guess, right now. You mentioned the partnerships, and that's something that jumped out at me when I was looking at what have they been doing like the last month. And they're in this flywheel. Are they in it? Are they spinning it? Where at the same time they're benefiting from the hundreds of billions invested in AI infrastructure. At the same time, with partnerships, I'll mention in a second, they're really working to kind of help create more demand for that. So they're kind of in the middle there, because we know Jensen talks a lot about AI factories, and that requires a ton of upfront investment. They announced the partnership they announced just a few weeks ago, with huge partnership with key institutional investors. They want to mobilize $500 billion in third-party capital. And mobilize to me was a key word, because what we know they're not doing is writing a check. But what they want to do is create these financial structures that attract the capital, that allow them to deploy it. And that ties to Jensen's bigger thesis, which I hope he expands on in the next few minutes. And that is, he says, NVIDIA compute needs to be viewed as his term investable assets, AI factories as investable infrastructure. So depending on how he extends that thesis, I think we'll know whether the margin conversation is reliable right now, or whether we think that's not going to play out long term.
Tom, just put these earnings into context for us, because we get that they're good, but for anyone who didn't stay up late to listen to them and pass through them, just how strong were they? Are they strong enough to put the AI bubble fears to bed?
Well, I think that soundbite from the CFO of Nvidia really underscored the forward strength that they are seeing, and that's so consequential for the broader ecosystem and frankly for the global economy in many aspects. So what she was pointing to was 70% revenue growth in fiscal 2028. That's next year, the calendar year of next year. What was really interesting is that she could have outlined a stronger revenue picture if they weren't supply constrained. And so this is a company that is seeing constraints across the supply chain. That's what Jensen Huang said. And they could be delivering even more revenue if that wasn't an issue. So it's not a question about the demand. The demand is red hot. It's how they supply that. I'll bring it back to the quarterly earnings, the second quarter earnings. So revenue's more than doubling to more than $96 billion, almost $100 billion in a quarter, year on year. Profits coming in, earnings per share, $2.22, well above the estimates. And the expectations for the current quarter also beating the estimates as well. If you're looking for any flies in the ointment, it's that margin story. We talked about the reporting around pushing up prices up to 15% for some of their key customers. Margins, the CFO said, would be squeezed in the months ahead. So if you're looking for any weakness, maybe it's the margin story. Margins could get down to around 71, 72%. Now, like, 71% margin. Most companies would take that in a heartbeat. But we're going from 75% margin, gross margin, to 71, 72% in the months ahead, according to the CFO. So possibly that is something that those who are a little bit more negative on this stock will focus in on. But in terms of the demand story, it's incredibly high. This is a company that needs the rest of the ecosystem. It needs TSMC, it needs Samsung, it needs SK Hynix to spend on CapEx to be able to ensure that they get the memory chips and the production from the fabs to be able to meet that demand.
Okay, so really incredible. And then we've got Nvidia stepping back into the China market. So how important is that as a share of revenue, or is it really more about the symbolism of getting back into China?
It is a bit more about getting that toehold back into China. And just taking a step back, this is a US administration, not just the Trump administration, the Biden administration, who have gone back and forth in terms of how far they restrict and to what extent they restrict chip sales into the Chinese market. The bottom line is they can now. They've signed off the Trump administration on a certain number of H200. Those are two generations behind the current chipset, the Blackwell chipset. The H200 can now be shipped into China in certain quantities. The other side of that is that China has to agree to those shipments, has to sign off, and their companies actually buying them. What we've learned is that there is now revenue coming through from China for Nvidia in the billions, about $7 billion US. So it's not insignificant, but it's still less than 1% of their revenues from the data center. So it's an area, of course, Jensen Huang has been lobbying hard in Washington to get access to that Chinese market. It's paid off to some extent. They really need the Chinese authorities to go full bore and sign off on their companies buying these chips in greater quantity. So far, we're not seeing that, but this is a company now that has that toehold back in the Chinese market.
As we look at this margin conversation, I mean, yes, 75%, a nice solid round number coming in right with the expectation. Is it silly that we are trying to break down whether a potential 50 basis point move is the reason that Nvidia may not move higher on growth that Alex Coffey pointed out? I mean, numbers that are one of one. There is no one that touches what they are doing right now. I mean, has the bar just become so high that the hammer can't do anything but fall and pummel it down?
Marley, I think that's it. I think it's like I said earlier, when you're Nvidia, good isn't necessarily good enough, but also to your point, when you're Nvidia, the bar is so high, everyone's limboing underneath it except for them. So there's three things that in the next few minutes I would love to hear from Jensen. The first is on that demand. I talked about, they're in this interesting dynamic of benefiting from all the hundreds of billions invested, but what they need to show is like what I said last month. You guys are Show Me the Money. They need to show that demand isn't just big, but it's also broadening, that it can carry them through this transition that they're in from Blackwell to Vera Rubin. And there's also something I saw yesterday, new demand vectors, and I'm hoping he touches on this, the Perplexity NVIDIA partnership about the portable computer, because I think that shows NVIDIA isn't just moving towards these big AI factories, but is it coming closer to the user? And then the transition, like I said, they've got to be able to show where are they in the Blackwell to Rubin transition. The numbers look good. But also on the economics front, show us what are customers doing? Where's the proof in the pudding? Because the street and investors want to know, where is all this demand coming from, and what will it generate in terms of business value moving forward?
Right, yeah, it really feels like we're splitting hairs here, doesn't it? I mean, particularly when you think about the guidance, as I mentioned, it seemed like the initial commentary off the back of this was that it was higher than estimates but lower than the buy-side consensus. So again, very lofty expectations here. He mentioned, or at least the report mentioned, that the Vera Rubin was in full production. I hear what you're saying about the end customer here, but what would you like to hear specifically on the roadmap for that?
I think what NVIDIA has an opportunity for at this point, where that's concerned, Sam, is instead of showing Blackwell slowing down and Vera Rubin ramping up, they have the opportunity here and the momentum in the market with existing customers to stack those. So they're not ending one growth cycle while launching another. They're stacking them, and that's fuel. And that's what I think we're going to hear. I think the data that I've been researching indicates, before obviously the numbers today, we hear from Jensen, that that's the direction it's going. They're also been working to really make sure that customers, existing, can get more value out of the infrastructure they've already purchased. Dynamo, for example. So I'm seeing a lot of give and take two-way street NVIDIA with its customers, with its partner ecosystem, and that's great. It's just how are investors and the street reacting to things that they think, and you need to be a little bit more.
And as we look at, the reactions, a lot of the commentary that's been driving Nvidia of late is on these headlines. This Ports Pike opportunity in Ohio here. Now I'm looking across some of the commentary, the limited commentary we've gotten in advance of the call here. They're saying that the infrastructure at Ports Pike could represent about 1.5 million GPUs. Then they go on to say that that could be 150 to $200 billion in revenue, Lisa. I mean, that is a huge number. But again, important to look up. I was just looking up the press release from Nvidia about the timing of this. This expected to come online in 2028. So we are a ways out here. How are you looking at some of these opportunities? Because they also made some commentary around the leases that they've signed out over the next 15 years or so, and that they plan to lease those now to third parties. So we have even more areas or avenues for them to drive growth. Some of them are just a bit down the road.
The word rather, Marley, to your point, that comes to my mind when you look at these facts and statements is sustainability. How sustainable is this growth? Because NVIDIA, it's arguably not at the center of the AI boom, right? We know that. But being that nucleus doesn't make it immune to all the economics of said boom. They also still have what I see, significant customer concentration. I think last quarter, like 3 of its biggest customers contributed to over half the revenue. And so what that does, kind of pivoting off of what Alex said in the last segment, that could open up competition, because we know that some of NVIDIA's biggest hyperscale customers, they're also investing in their own custom silicon. So from a sustainability, growth, and demand perspective, NVIDIA has to prove, why should customers keep buying NVIDIA? And not just buying it, why should they keep spending at the pace we're seeing? And that's where the ROI conversation comes into play, because eventually those hundreds of billions, they have to turn into, for customers, revenue, productivity, real business value.
NVIDIA's earnings and what this is telling us about the AI investment cycle.
Well, it's a juggernaut, obviously. I mean, it shows that AI is powering all the macroeconomic growth. I mean, just to give you a number, GDP growth, the value of all the things that we produce, is growing about 2%. That's what we grew last year. That's what we grew so far this year. That's what we're tracking in the third quarter. And AI is accounting for at least a fourth of that. So without the boost from artificial intelligence, we can talk about the channels through which that's occurring. But that's without it, just to give context, we'd be growing closer to 1.5%, and we'd have a very kind of different narrative about how the economy is doing. So NVIDIA is kind of is obviously the poster child for what's going on in AI, and AI is driving the economic train. It's critical to growth.
What would be the signs that AI is actually transforming business output instead of just speeding up routine jobs? Can you just talk a little bit more about those indicators that you watch?
Yeah, I mean, so far, AI has been adding to the demand side of the economy, right? That's the growth. That's the investment spending, the CapEx, all the build out, what NVIDIA is feasting on, all of that growth. There's also the surge in AI stock prices. I mean, AI companies broadly defined, tech companies broadly defined, account for about 10% of GDP, but they account for about 50% of the S&P 500's market cap and about 2/3 of the increase in stock prices since ChatGPT was put on the planet 4 years ago. So it's driving a lot of growth on the demand side, not on the supply side, meaning productivity growth. That really hasn't shown up yet. So that's the key. We need to see that. Now, measuring productivity is tough, even in the best of times when things aren't moving around and there isn't these big technological changes. So maybe we're not. The data is not up to actually capturing what's going on, but that's the key thing. We got to see productivity growth begin to pick up in a meaningful way. We're growing 2%. That's the GDP growth. That's current that's current productivity growth. If it starts inching higher to 2.25, 2.5, then I'd start to say, okay, now I'm starting to see it. By the way, those productivity gains are kind of critical to support these stock valuations, right? Because stock investors are betting on these companies really changing things fundamentally on the supply side of the economy, that we are going to get those productivity gains. If we don't see them, and we don't start to see them pretty soon, then one could imagine that investors are going to start, questioning their theories and valuations of these companies.
Let's just note, last year, that revenue, same quarter last year, $46.74 billion. So you see the jump immediately. Adjusted earnings per share, we're looking at $2.22 per share. Estimate was $2.09 per share. That is also a beat. At the data, let's drill into the revenue. The data center revenue, $89 billion. Wall Street was looking for $85.86 billion. That is also a beat. Let's look at the revenue guidance. The key number for next quarter, we're looking at $108 billion from Nvidia. Consensus was $105.16 billion. Again, good there as well. And the margin, we're looking at 75%. Last year, that was 72.7. This is going to be a strong report. The question's going to be, it's not about the numbers. The question's going to be, what can Jensen come on and say about the financing concerns, about the financing deals, about what we're seeing in that market? I'll also note here, Vera Rubin says now in full production is what we're getting. That's another positive for the stock.
We heard from the hyperscalers. We knew it was going to be a good quarter because they keep spending. At the same time, these questions now, Ben, that those customers increasingly becoming competitors, especially names like Amazon and Microsoft and definitely Alphabet. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we still think this is a giant pool, right? It's not binary. It's not that if any of them keep investing in their custom silicon efforts, as we assume that they will do, that's just net negative right across the board for NVIDIA. We still think there's a large portion, right? My general thesis is that we're still onboarding the largest enterprises in the world to start to deploy AI at scale. We do believe a lot of those workloads will go to NVIDIA-based ones in the clouds, where the hyperscalers are still doing custom silicon, with a good portion of those workloads still being for internal, not necessarily general purpose, for like your mainstream enterprises, where we do still think NVIDIA is the best bet there. And again, I think all the customers that you mentioned continue to also buy a lot of NVIDIA. NVIDIA's moat is going to be several things that we talk about, but TCO is the thing he continues to push on, right? Revenue per megawatt. If you are constrained in terms of just how much power you have at any one location to buy your infrastructure, and the flip side of that economic argument is that you want to make as much money on that infrastructure, selling CSP services to the broader enterprise and whatnot, that's going to be, NVIDIA's claim that they're the best TCO, the best revenue per megawatt. I think that has to be a continual. They show Vera Rubin continues to be on that vector. So I think as long as all those things hold, they continue to be the best economic investment by the clouds and hyperscalers in order to monetize tokens for third-party workloads. That's going to continue to favor NVIDIA. So we continue to think they'll emphasize TCO, the value, revenue per megawatt, because that is, again, a basis in which buyers buy hardware.
NVIDIA is sold out, right? It's as simple as that. NVIDIA is sold out. They've said that for a long time. They're sold out this year. They're probably sold out next year. We all know how much their capacity is. And so it's very hard for them to surprise to the upside. We've seen a lot of companies this quarter have incredible results, really surprised to the upside and big swings. NVIDIA doesn't have the leeway to do that. They're selling everything they can, and it's just hard to be impressive when you're, completely sold out and no surprises.
Per Bloomberg, my friend, around 96% of analysts have a buy on this name. 96%, all right? There's a lot of love for NVIDIA. There are two holds, and there's one sell. That's you, Jay. There's one sell. It sounds like you're saying, is the primary reason those supply constraints, and you obviously argue that that's not going to ease in the second half or 2027, you think that's going to get worse?
Yeah, I mean, I've always positioned my sell rating as more of an underperform. Seaport structurally calls it a sell, but I've always pitched this to clients as an underperform. Other companies are going to do better than NVIDIA, and that's borne out over the last year. NVIDIA, I think, is the worst performing stock in the SOX index, right? And I think, industry analysts like your previous guest, Ben Baharin, who's my co-host on the Circuit podcast, they see a lot of incredible technology coming out. They see the industry growing. But for analysts looking at it from a stock perspective, we care about relative performance a lot, and it's just not doing that, right? It's not outperforming. It's not surprising to the upside.
What would you need to see, Jay, to convince you? You know what? I was wrong. I'm upgrading to a buy, or even upgrade to a hold, Jay.
There's 79 other analysts covering this stock. I'm the only sell rating. I think before I upgrade, we're going to see other people downgrade, right? I think the only sort of thing I could foresee that I could readily discuss is if the entire AI complex falls apart, if the whole AI trade stops, if hyperscalers stop spending on CapEx, then maybe we see a flight to quality and flight to safety in NVIDIA. But even that seems pretty unlikely because there's a lot of unsafe things happening on NVIDIA's balance sheets now that's going to look pretty ugly when the cycle turns.